Amazing. So, again, to introduce myself, I'm Callum. I use they, he pronouns, and I'm one of the Green Students Committee co-conveners. Thank you all for being here today. We really appreciate you taking your evening to come and talk about getting Young Greens elected and getting really excited about our action days. 2024 is incredibly important for us as Young Greens and also the Green Party in general. The local elections coming up are really great. We've got some really cool campaigns going on all across the country, which I'm sure we will get into a bit later. And there's a real chance for you to get involved in all of these campaigns, meet some amazing activists, and make some really cool changes. We're going to go through a couple presentations about our campaigning and how we do that, and also look at like what a Young Green Action Day entails. And then we will be joined by our lovely panelists, Izzy, Jamie, and Dan, to go over a couple of questions about action days and campaigning, and how to kind of get motivated around that. The session will also be recorded and uploaded on YouTube as well. So if you feel more comfortable with your cameras off, that's completely fine. And you can feel free to watch back as many times as you like. And if you are watching on YouTube, this feels a bit cringy to say, but thank you, like and subscribe. So that's always very good. And our first section today is from our lovely elections officer, Dan, who I will hand over to.
Hello, hiya everybody. I'm Dan. I'm part of our election officer coach job share on the Young Greens exec at the moment. I'm right in thinking I have screen sharing, don't I, Amelia? Amazing, thank you. So, there we go. So, what I'm basically going to lead with is just a brief introduction to Young Green elections as a whole. I just need to start the slideshow. Here we go. And so the Green Party is an electoral political party. It's something I like to remind people of. It's something I think even we forget sometimes. We spend a lot of time doing activism of various kinds, and things you should be doing. And I have to occasionally slow them down and then go, no, we do elections because we are a political party. And we're getting very good at it. So in the presentation plan, just to give you an idea, I'm going to talk briefly about the growth of elected Greens and Young Greens as a whole, a bit of an introduction to action days, which are kind of the main thing that we as Young Greens do around local elections, some of the things that our Young Green councillors have achieved, which are super exciting, and then on to you and the stuff that you can do to get involved to help out Young Green candidates. So I don't know if you will have seen this graph before. This graph is now slightly notorious in the Green Party. People sometimes call it the hockey stick graph. We have skyrocketed in the number of local councillors that we've elected since 2018 in particular. This is the point where target to win campaigning, which I'm sure is going to come up later, becomes really, really widespread. And we just go from an okay-ish number of councillors, but now we're looking at 750. The aim is to be at, I'm pretty sure it's 900 in the next 2 years. So we're really, really on the up. And one of the things that's super exciting about that is we keep electing young people. There aren't very many young people in local government, which is a massive shame. The average age of a local councillor is 60. But we now have 35 Young Greens, so members of the Green Party who are under the age of 35 who've been elected as councillors. We might even have one in the call today, which will be very exciting. We can talk about that later, Izzy. That's why on this graph, we have 34 in 2023 and we have 35 in 2024 because Izzy was just elected in a by-election. We do a lot better in terms of young councillors than almost any other party. About 5% of our councillors nationally are under 30, which is absolutely brilliant. And hopefully it'll carry on being the case. And this is part of why. So as the Young Greens, we organise action days and we go and mobilise to support Young Green candidates. So on these, we have Izzy, and she ran for election last time, with Tom up in Lancaster, with a really great turnout. I think Jamie is also in the background of that photo. And we've also got Alexander down here, who is over in Hove for Brighton and Hove City Council. We get really great turnouts for these action days. I had a lovely weekend in Worcester last weekend, going and supporting one of our candidates there, because this really does make a difference for people. We go down, we door knock, and just mobilise for young candidates, because especially in the last few weeks of an election, every little bit helps, and we really can tip them over the line just with a few extra door knockers. So an action day is a specific thing. We only organise them as Young Greens to support Young Green candidates. We could very happily go and support lots of wonderful other people, but our aim is to make sure that we get young people elected. As well as being the youth branch of the Green Party, we also represent young people in the party. So we should be getting more of them elected. And traditionally, this is kind of the layout for the day. We'll all arrive. People often arrive by train. Speeches from the candidates, speeches from any big names. If any of our leadership team have come along, say, we'll do very brief door knocking training, because it's actually not that complicated. And then we'll go out in groups. Often, if you are really nervous about door knocking, you can ask to be buddied up with somebody to learn what the process is. And then lunch is nearly always provided. It's always vegan. This is the Green Party. That's how this works. And then usually there'll be a little bit more door knocking in the afternoon. And then we usually have a little social, which is lovely because you get to meet Young Greens from all over the country. Action days have helped a lot of people get much more involved in this process. The first thing I did to engage with the National Young Greens was an action day. And now I'm on the exec. So it might be a slippery slope, but it's a good slippery slope. And they do work. We do get Young Greens elected off the back of months and months and months of hard work running up to them. But then action days is one of the things that can really help right at the last minute. And the thing that's great is once Young Greens get elected, they do amazing things. So I've just got a quick few. Rosie Rule and Lucy Pegg in Oxford managed to get Oxford City Council to provide free period products in all public buildings. Just amazing. This is something that I think had sat kind of in the background of Oxford City Council for a number of years. They brought it to council, it passed unanimously because they just provided that energy. And yeah, Rosie and Lucy are fab if you want to do an extra Google after this. Equally in Norwich, Alex Catt and Jamie Osborne, who are both Young Green councillors, passed a trans rights solidarity motion in Norwich, which I think was the first motion of solidarity within the city, which does make a difference for people. Up in Lancaster, more exciting things happening. So Tom, who we mentioned earlier, and a number of other councillors in Lancaster, I think Izzy was involved in organising this as well, a little bit. Organised an event recently that was about solidarity with people in Palestine, fundraising, education on how you can support people in Palestine. And Brighton and Hove, when we were in control of the council, we had a really lovely thing where we had cabinet positions and some of our cabinet members were Young Greens. So she's now Hannah Albrook, but Hannah was the deputy leader of the council and the chair for Children, Young People and Skills, and led the introduction of the first trans toolkit for schools, which is much better than the government's advice about this as an issue, and was actually kind of seismic in terms of trans rights and representation in schools in the UK. So Young Greens do amazing, amazing things when we get them elected. And we're getting lots of them elected. We got 16 Young Greens elected last time in 2023. I do have a list somewhere of how many are running this time. It's more than 16. We will continue to get lots and lots and lots of Young Greens elected, which is very, very exciting. And you can be part of it. We have action days lined up for a number of candidates around the country. We went and supported Izzy's by-election campaign in Lancaster. We've now been to Worcester. This weekend, we'll be going down to London to support Ria Patel and Nate Higgins, who are two of our candidates for the London Assembly elections. And then we have a whole variety of local election candidates: Colchester, Plymouth, Wakefield, Oxford and Bristol. running all of the weekends pretty much between now and the elections on May the 2nd. So you should already have been sent links for those things, but please do consider going. They're great fun, and a great way to get involved. I think I'm now passing over to Jamie.
Okay, sound. If you could, yeah, okay, I'll share my screen now. Okie dokie. 1 second. I'm too old for this. Here we go. We got it. Okay, so yes. Thank you, Dan. So I'm gonna kind of carry on from what Dan was saying, thinking about getting kind of Young Greens elected, how we can get young people to stand, and kind of a little bit about what running for election will look like. Okay, so yeah, my name's Jamie. I use he, him pronouns. So I was involved, particularly up in Lancaster, for the Young Greens initially, and then I was employed by the Green Party as a campaign organizer. So I was basically running the election campaigns up in Lancaster in 2023. So kind of looking at the background a little bit, back in 2019, we had one Young Green run in the Lancaster City Council elections, and she wasn't elected, which is fine, but we only had one person kind of running. In 2023, we had 14 young people ran. Three of them got elected, and two others came very close. And when I say very close, one was 4 votes of getting elected, and the other was 28. So close, I mean, very, very close. But as we've already mentioned, Izzy, who was the person who was 28 votes off, has now been elected with the help of the Young Green Action Days, as Dan said, / all the hard work Izzy does. But we now have 4 Young Greens on Lancaster City Council, which is the most in any local council for the Greens. I think Norwich have 3, and now we have 4. So it's great that lots of councils are building up their numbers. So basically, briefly, what I will be talking about is how did we manage sort of to achieve this improvement in the number of young people running in 4 years. So yeah, I'll break into 2 points. Firstly is about getting young people to stand, and secondly, once they're standing, what does running for election look like? So getting young people to stand. So the first thing I kind of want to very briefly address is up in Lancaster, we do have quite an active Young Green society, which does help recruit candidates if a Young Green, so this is at Lancaster Uni, if a kind of society or group exists, is helpful, but it's not essential. So I just want to make it clear that the advice I'm giving now is regardless of whether there's an active Young Green group in your area or not, you can still kind of use the advice I'm giving. I worked out that in Lancaster, half of our candidates, so 7 out of the 14, were totally unrelated to the society and to the group. And that included all 3 who were elected weren't part of or weren't initially part of our group. So yeah, the advice I'm giving can be for anywhere, regardless of how active your Young Greens are. So the first thing to do to help get young people to stand. So I'm kind of taking this as the perspective of you're trying to bring others in as well, is ask people and ask and encourage young people to stand, and then ask them again and again and again. You'll hear this a lot from people in the Green Party that a lot of the times when you first ask somebody to stand for election, they will say no. I've stood for election and I said no initially. I think we'll talk about this in the panel discussion. I know Izzy said no initially. Most famously is Cllr Izzy, co-leader of the Green Party. If you ever hear her speak about running for election, she will tell you. I think it was 7 times, but you have to listen to her to be sure. But I think it was 7 times she was asked until she first said yes. So if there's a young person who you think would be good as a counsellor, you need to ask them and then ask them again and again. Obviously, some people, if they just say like, if it's like a definite, I hate that idea, I'm never gonna run, a solid no, of course, is a no. But a lot of the times you'll hear people say, oh, I don't feel confident enough. I'm not sure I have enough experience. That's not my kind of thing. I wouldn't be very good. Um, and when you hear people say that, it's kind of on us to try and, yeah, encourage them and support them and make them realize that they are good candidates. And if you're thinking this about yourself, then realize you are a good candidate. You could be a great counsellor. I can assure you that all the retired Tory councillors are really not very good. They have no idea what they're doing, but they still do it. So we need to encourage far more competent young Greens to stand. So that's the first thing. You'll hear that a lot from lots of people. The second one is go beyond just Green Party members. So we did this in Lancaster and it's very effective. The Green Party are unique. People like the Green Party. Um, we're a genuinely kind of left-wing option in British politics, and you'll find people who are happy to run for the Green Party that wouldn't run for any other party. So if you know somebody from, I don't know, activism, from protests, just a friend, somebody who you think would be good, don't be afraid to ask them. Again, this is what we did in Lancaster. And we got people to run who are now brilliant councillors, both young Greens and non-young Greens, but you'll find people who otherwise may not have kind of stood. So if you're part of the Green Party and you think, oh, there's hardly any, there's no young people in my area, it's just me. Well, you know other young people, and you'd be surprised at how many people will say yes with a bit of encouragement. Okay, the next bit is about being clear with what you're asking people to do in terms of running to be a councillor. Kind of the next slide when I talk about what it means to run, kind of we'll get into this a tiny bit more. But yes, actually, I'll leave this to the next bit. But yeah, you got to be really clear with what you're asking of people, and signposting where support is, and being prepared to help answer questions. So running for election is really scary. If you haven't run before and you're thinking about it, it feels really scary. But kind of realizing that the Green Party and the Young Greens have lots of support that can be offered, whether through, like Dan and Kelsey, the elections officers, or your local party, or your field organizer. There's lots of people who can help you run. So I think, yeah, being asked to run is very nerve-wracking. So kind of being able to say like, oh, but you have all this support and all this help sort of thing, helps encourage people to do it. So I'll talk about that a tiny bit in the next slide. And the last thing is I'm kind of coming at this as if we're asking other people, but also I realize probably most people on this call haven't run themselves. So run yourself. Don't be afraid. Contact your local party and offer to run. Hopefully this session will kind of help encourage people too. But that's like, yeah, run yourself. It's you'll feel good about it, and yeah, like I said, hopefully this will help kind of encourage people to not be too afraid to do it. Okay, so the campaign. So Dan mentioned about target to win. So in the Green Party, we're very good at targeting specific kind of seats. So yeah, basically being a target candidate is totally different from being a non-target candidate. And I'll very quickly talk through the two as quickly as I can. I don't have time to go through all the details of what a campaign looks like, not least because every campaign ever is a bit different. So each one is unique, but I can briefly kind of say target candidate, non-target candidate, why both are important, and what the difference is. So target candidates. This is basically what you think when you think running for election. It's door knocking multiple times a week. It's creating literature. It's speaking to emailing residents. It's going to hustings if most local councils don't have hustings, but if it does, then it's going to hustings, and it's doing anything else that might come up. So being a target candidate is basically standing in an area where we think we can win, and you're working really hard to win, basically, to be a councillor. So it's quite a big responsibility. It's, it's a commitment. It's committing to wanting to be a councillor for however many years. I think it's really worthwhile. I've been a target candidate. It's a really good experience, but this is kind of target candidate is what you think when you think of running for election. So I think that's kind of the more obvious one. Now, non-target candidates is what a lot of people don't think about when, thinking about running for election or, trying to get young people to run for election sort of thing. So non-target candidates, you're standing in a ward where we know the Greens won't win and you don't do any campaigning. So you basically sign some paperwork, you help get 2 residents to nominate you, and that's your job done. You don't go to hustings, you don't do any literature, you don't do any door knocking. So yeah, this is the other side of what being a candidate can look like. So you may look at that and think, well, why do we need non-target candidates if we know that they're not going to win and you don't really do any campaigning? It seems like a contradiction. But non-target candidates are really important, and I think particularly young green non-target candidates are really important. So I kind of got 3 reasons why it's very important in my opinion. So number one, simply because democracy is important. With Labour continuing to move to the right, the Greens are in effect the only major left-wing party left in the country. And I think everybody deserves a chance to vote for a progressive left-wing party. And if we're not standing non-target candidates, then lots of people won't have that opportunity. So yeah, we just give everybody the chance to vote Green, even if we know we're not going to win in that ward. It's still people who can actually vote for something progressive and meaningful, not just vote for the same old centre right to right wing parties. Reason number 2 is for young people. It's a really good way for young people to see how the process of running for election without actually having to commit to wanting to kind of be a councillor. It's a good way into being a target candidate in the future. You can kind of see how it feels, see what it looks like. You can even go to the vote count if you want to, and kind of be part of the process without a full commitment. It's kind of a nice halfway house to kind of dip your toe in, which is a lot of what I said to the young Greens who were standing in Lancaster. It's a good way to kind of just see how it works. And finally, separate from the young Greens, non-target candidates help us find where we have natural pockets of support. In terms of like non-target candidates truly do not win. I'm not just saying that like non-target candidates don't win, because you have to put in a lot of work to win an election, particularly as the Greens. But we can see like, oh, in this area we came whatever 3rd or maybe even 2nd, and like we got a solid amount of votes, and then we know in the future we can target that ward. So yeah, these are the main differences. So I kind of want to get across that non-target candidates are really important. And if you're thinking about running but not sure, offering to be a non-target candidate is a really good way to help the Greens and kind of get involved. I'm running out of time, so I'll try and be nice and quick now. So very quickly, so I've ran myself both as a target and as a non-target candidate. I found both to be really meaningful, really worthwhile, and both really important. So if I can very quickly show you. So when I was a target candidate, I unfortunately didn't win, but it was still a really good kind of experience. And you can see this is what a target candidate looks like. 40% of the vote, very close to winning. I really went for this election, had lots of campaigning with other young Greens, getting involved, and it was really good. And I'm still really glad I did it, even though I didn't win in the end. Compared to being a non-target candidate, less than 10% of the vote, a very different situation. Of course, no campaigning or anything, but in my mind, these are actually both equally kind of important, because if we look at Upper Loon Valley, when I was a non-target candidate, Labour didn't bother to stand a candidate. So if I didn't stand for the Greens, it would have been a straight run between the Lib Dems and the Tories, which I don't think is a very good option for people. So by standing, as you can see, I gave 74 people the chance to actually vote for something progressive. something different from the status quo. And there's 74 people that otherwise wouldn't have had a chance to vote for something, yeah, progressive and different. And of course, this is just one tiny little ward. If we could get non-target candidates in every ward, that 74 becomes a much bigger number, and suddenly lots and lots of people have had the chance to kind of vote Green. So yeah, to wrap up, if we want to get more young people to stand, we need to start asking and encouraging young people to stand early and ask them often. So really, you want to be asking them months or years in advance if you can. And for yourself as well, start thinking about it so far in advance. Then you have lots of time to ask questions, to consider it, to think about it, to whatever. Asking people a few weeks before nominations close, you're more likely to get big no's. Whereas if you ask them a year in advance, hey, maybe over a few months you can persuade them. Ooh. Okay, and again, think beyond just party members. I said in Lancaster, we got lots of really good candidates from activism stuff, from people that did volunteering outside the Green Party, even just friends. I asked my mates, and a couple of them stood and as non-target candidates, and it meant that we had young people running, and it brings people into the party and hopefully gets them more involved, more widely as well. Be clear with what you're asking from them. So again, now we've had target versus non-target candidates. You maybe understand more whether you're asking other people or thinking about it for yourself. You kind of have an idea of, the differences, and you can say to people, these are your choices, sort of thing. You'll also find that sometimes people will step up. They might originally say non-target and then choose to become a target candidate. Grace Russell, who's a Young Green councillor in Lancaster, initially wanted to be non-target and made the step up and is now a councillor. So yeah, people can change, but be really clear of the differences, whether you're asking them or thinking about it yourself. Again, signpost where support is. You've got field organisers, campaign organisers, which was my job to help you. You have the Young Greens, you have local parties. So yeah, running for elections is scary. So be ready to kind of help people answer questions. If you don't know the answers, then you can get involved in a local party and they can help, that sort of thing. And my final point for the people on this call is contact your local party and offer to run yourself. Now I've spoken about target, non-target candidates. Yeah, and hopefully we can talk more in the discussion as well. If you're sat here thinking this could be you, do it, because you'll be glad you did it. And it is scary, but yeah, I believe in us. We need more young people to run, and we need more young people to get elected. So this is your sign to take the plunge. But yeah, that's it from me. I'll hand back over to Callum or Amelia, and we can do the discussion bit.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, so basically, like they've said, stand to be elected, turn up to our action days. They're all crucially important to getting Greens elected, and Young Greens elected across the country. One of my favorite facts at the moment is I think we're like just short of 4 times the amount of councillors that Reform UK have in terms of Young Greens, which is really lovely. So if you want to keep those numbers up, turn up to our action days. Yeah, so we're going to have a bit of a panel now, and I'll hand over to Amelia.
Right. So our first question is basically about your first action days. So do you remember your action day and what encouraged you to go to your first one? We'll start with Izzy, then go to Dan, and then Jamie.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Izzy. I use she, her pronouns, and yeah, I'm a city councillor now here in Lancaster. I mean, it's just been 2 weeks, but yeah, my first action day, I think it must have been February of last year, so 2023, leading up to the local elections here in Lancaster. I think we'd had quite regular action days, even starting, I think, in October, and I had just not been able to make any of the previous ones, so I felt really guilty. So I was like, oh, Jamie keeps asking, I'll go along to this action day. And I also sort of saw it as like a practice for myself. I was like, I know I'm running, so I'm gonna have to practice knocking on doors and talking to people, because that wasn't something I really initially felt super confident about. Yeah, I went along and it was actually great. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, and everyone was really nice and friendly and everything. So I felt actually quite relieved after that. I said, oh, well, this election campaigning is not as hard as I thought it would be.
So, so I'm now based in Nottingham, but I got properly engaged with the Green Party while I was at uni in Cambridge. I went to an action day there in, I want to say, late 2021, starved of human contact from the pandemic. And I'd been following the local Young Greens on social media and just saw something was coming up and I went, oh, I can go and see people and go and have a walk. And so I went along to that. It was based at a local member's house. They'd cooked a beautiful curry. And the thing that was nicest for me was there were half a dozen other Young Greens there, and immediately you have a sense of community and people you can talk to about politics things if that's something you like doing. And some of those have then gone on to be really, really great friends. And I was lucky that Cambridge Green Party were running a buddying system. So if you didn't want a door knock to start off with, you didn't on your own, you didn't have to. A lot of local parties are very, very good at kind of gently introducing you to it. And then I found, just like Izzy, that actually it's not that scary. I quite like door knocking. I'm really nosy, so you're going to find out what people have been up to. It's great fun.
Yeah, nice. I agree with Dan. It's fun. So I was a bit, I don't remember my first action day, but I do, the first time I ever went out door knocking, this isn't like a boohoo sad, sad story, but I was just sent out on my own, which the Green Party should never do. It was in 2021 and the candidate just dropped a load of, he's not even a Green Party member anymore. We just dropped a load of stuff and was like, yeah, go off and do these roads. And it sucked. So my message firstly is if you get asked to do that by a local party, just say no, because nobody should have to door knock on their own. And that nearly put me off door knocking, which is why it's a bad thing to do, because on your own for the first time isn't very fun. So it nearly put me off. But then as I started going to action days, you realize that they're way better. Like action days are genuinely fun. Like I said, I don't actually remember what my first one was because I think at this point I've been to so many. But like Dan said, like you have a real sense of community. There's always nice food. You get to meet new people. You get support, which yeah, I didn't have when I was on my own. And you can like, if you're nervous, you can ask and people will help you and stuff. So I don't remember my first action day, but I remember the feeling of action days compared to just door knocking on my own. And it's like night and day. So yeah, they're a really nice way to kind of get involved, meet new people, and it's like a very supportive way to start. And like Izzy and Dan said, once you start knocking on doors, you really realize that like, hey, this is actually fine. Like it's actually quite fun. People are nice. People like the Green Party, even if they're not going to vote for us. People don't like shouting at Greens. So yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, 100%. Every single action day I've been to has been absolutely lovely. And also there's often like activities if you are really not wanting to do door knocking, there's stuff you can do too. We love a bit of door knocking though. So our next question for the panel kind of leads on from that. And it's what would you say to someone who might be on the fence about attending their first action day? There might be some people in the call who are in this pool of people. Yeah, it'd be really cool for just like maybe one bit of advice if people are questioning whether to go or not. And this time we'll start with Dan and then Jamie and Izzy.
That's a very good question. I think this is a bit of a weird one. I'm kind of going to give a bit of advice rather than a bit of encouragement. I think my piece of advice would be kind of know what you want to get out of it. Know that if someone says to you, oh, we'll just go off to this street, just say, no, thank you. I would like a buddy to do this for the first time. Know that actually it is totally within your rights to go to your first action day and say, hey, I don't want to door knock yet, but I want to meet you all. And I don't want to meet you all at a social or at a talk or at something like this. I want to meet you somewhere where I can do something practical and I can help. So give me some leaflets and I'll go and do that. But just know, obviously, I'm not saying you need to know what an action day is and have everything planned out for the whole day, but know kind of where you think your boundaries would be, which things that you think might happen you do or don't want to do, and totally feel able to say to people, I'd rather not do that if that's okay, maybe next time, because you'll probably want to come back again. Genuinely, they are a good experience.
Yeah, I agree with Dan on that. I realize we've been talking about the door knocking, but like any good action, and I think all action days, there's always an option to leaflets. Certainly when I ran them in Lancaster, we'd always have a load of leaflets that needed to be delivered for people that didn't want to door knock, because door knocking can be kind of a bit terrifying. But that does come on to what I was going to say to somebody on the fence, which is don't wait. Don't wait for the fear to go away, because it's not. Like, you're going to feel nervous the first time. Don't be like, oh, I'll go to the one after this one because I feel a bit sick about this. Like, you're going to keep feeling nervous. It's the first, like, it's something new. It's kind of scary, whether that's just like meeting a load of new people or door knocking or even just leafleting. If you haven't done that before, it can still be nerve-wracking. So I would say don't wait for that fear to go, because if you do, you'll never go to an action day. Because I felt nervous for my first few, even when I was literally getting paid by the Green Party to do like elections. Sometimes it'd be like a morning to go door knocking, and I'd feel that thing in my stomach, and I'd be like, oh, I don't really want to do this. And then you start, and within 5 minutes, you're like, oh no, this is nice. So I would say, yeah, try to be brave, and realize that, yeah, action days are genuinely really fun. Campaigning is really fun. I wrote down on my notes. So I don't know how many doors I've knocked on, but it is literally thousands, and I can count on like one hand, probably on like three fingers, how many like difficult people I've had to deal with. Like, the chances of you facing like what you think is going to happen in your head is, oh, I'm going to knock on a door and somebody's going to scream at me. It doesn't happen. Like, people are nice. And like Dan said as well, like, um, asking for a buddy, asking for help. I think being open is good. Like, when you arrive, don't be afraid to literally tell the organizer, like, this is my first time and I'm feeling really nervous about it. And they will put you with somebody experienced. That's what I always did in Lancaster. Whenever there was a new person, I would say, well, this person knows what they're doing. Sometimes a counsellor or an experienced person, like, you can go together and you can watch them either for the first 10 minutes, the first half an hour, or the whole thing. You don't have to knock on the door. You can just watch what's happening. So yeah, I'd say don't wait for the fear to go away, but also like embrace it. Don't feel like you're weird for feeling nervous, and just be open about that when you go in, because yeah, it'll make the experience way better. So yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, I think I just have to agree with Jamie about just feeling scared and just doing it anyway. That was kind of my whole motto, like the whole of last year. Like, even going to the first action day, I was scared about knocking on doors, but I was also scared about meeting all the other green people who would be there, and I was like, oh God. And I was like, well, I just have to do it. And otherwise you're just not gonna do it at all. And then you'll just sit at home feeling miserable, like, oh, I wish I actually did go to that. You see photos afterwards, you go, that looked like really actually like they were having a lot of fun. So you're never going to know. And if it is absolutely awful, you don't ever have to go back and do it again. You can just try it once and then be like, oh, but that's maybe not for me. But you're not going to know until you try. And it is really true. People, when you're knocking on people's doors, people don't care that much. Obviously, they're interested, but they're just answering the door to some random person. They don't want the interaction to go on any longer than you really do. That's what I think. I think, well, if I was on the other side, I was opening the door to someone, I'm just going to be nice and friendly, but it's not like nothing is really that deep. They're just an average sort of person, so you don't have to be afraid of that. And then if you can, try and convince a friend to just go along with you. Anyone you think might be vaguely interested, like, oh, hey, there's this Green Party thing. I'm too scared to go along. Can you come along just to help me, like, as a friend? And then see if anyone will do that with you.
Great. Bring a friend along, convince them to get involved. That's a great way to get people involved as well. So obviously with campaigning, it can be quite exhausting and arduous. So in terms of your kind of election campaigns, how have you kept momentum and kept things lively when it can feel quite challenging? I should have said, we'll start with Jamie, then Izzy, then I.
Sound. I thought so, but I didn't want to butt in just in case. Okay, so how do we keep momentum in campaigns? It can be difficult. This is kind of just a boring answer, but it's true. Like, up in Lancaster, the way we did it is you make a plan and you stick to it. You decide what days you're going to go out door knocking. You decide how your leaflets and literature is going to work, and you stick to it rigidly, to make sure everything gets done. And it's also about turning up even when you kind of can't be bothered, because that's how you win elections. And like I said, like you'll feel nervous, you'll be like, I can't really be asked to do this, and then within 5 minutes you're like, hey, this is kind of fun. Like when we got Grace elected in Lancaster, we had a thing where like door knock every Saturday morning and I can't remember which weekday it was, but an evening as well. And sometimes like, you go out on the Friday night, you wake up Saturday morning feeling like, but you do it and then you finish the session and you're like, hey, that was kind of great. It was nice. Um, in terms of like the more positive side, making sure everybody's happy and okay, is about like I think kind of checking in regularly with your kind of like campaign team. Um, Definitely I've learned, and I think most people have, that you want to keep your campaign team as small as possible. Only the people that need to be involved in making decisions are the ones who make decisions. You don't need a random councillor looking at your literature. You can kind of just keep it as small as you can. And then what I would do is kind of make a little group chat, whatever, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever you want to do. And as well as going out all the time, it's nice to check in and see how people are doing and kind of make plans and talk. And yeah, and finally, also socials are important because you can burn out. And if you're just door knocking all the time, it won't feel very good. Like it's a lot of work, even though it's worthwhile. So we would always try and have some kind of like, whether it's like in the morning, getting some coffee, in the evening, going to a pub or something, always having something like picnic. I don't know. Izzy with the at the uni campaign with Tom Fish, were like they were really good at kind of doing these fun events afterwards. So you can definitely put on some nice stuff to keep activists energized and keep candidates um, energized. Yeah. And sorry, the absolute last thing that I will say very briefly is if you're in a campaign, use your field organizer / campaign organizer. So these are the people this was my job in Lancaster, like being employed by the Green Party to help run elections. And too many local parties don't use their field organizer. You can find out who yours is on the Green Party members website under like the elections bit. You can literally just find who it is and email them, and they will help you answer your questions and do stuff for you. So if you're running, use your field organizer because that's literally their job.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for keeping momentum, it's about keeping the morale of the team up. And I think definitely it's all about socials and trying to incorporate a social aspect into every sort of campaign activity that you're doing. It's sort of something in my recent by-election campaign, particularly when I was doing just like a door knocking session with like the Young Greens in Lancaster. It was, let's go for coffee afterwards, let's go for a drink. Because I think especially with young people, they've not got like, you're not going home to your family or other things. You want to sort of hang out and socialize and sort of make friends. And then people don't feel like you're using them as much. It's not like, oh, you just want me here to help you knock on doors. It's, oh, you want to hang out with me as well, kind of thing. So it doesn't feel as sort of transactional. And that was a nice thing about last year. It was sort of nice weather, spring, summer. We had like picnics on campus. Just, make it about like food and give people snacks and fuel to keep them going. That's important.
Yeah, I think I think Izzy and Jamie are absolutely right. Basically, making it fun is kind of the best thing you can possibly do. I'm also going to come at it from a slightly strange angle, which is I'm currently helping with a local council campaign, not for a Young Green candidate, unfortunately, but Richard is lovely, so that's fine. And one of the things that I've found in doing that is that actually you have to make it easy for people. Yes, it is a little bit about kind of gritting your teeth and pushing through things, but if it feels like gritting your teeth and pushing through from day one, you're going to end up with no activists by election day. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do, and I'm now making some progress on, is working out, genuinely what times actually do work for people. A lot of my volunteers are older people or people with kids who say, actually, the weekend's really not that good for me. Working out what sorts of things they actually want to go to as a social afterwards. It's pretty clear that actually basically no one who is coming volunteering wants to go drinking afterwards. Everyone basically wants to go and have a cuppa. And actually That was also the case in Cambridge Young Greens. That wasn't a boozy uni society. We were very kind of, no, actually, I'd really like to just go and have a coffee now, please. I'm tired. So if you can make things, especially early on in a campaign, especially when you're introducing somebody to campaigning for the first time, if you can make things seem easy as well as fun, that's ideal. If you can meet them on their own level.
That's all very insightful. Thank you all very much. This next one is more about our local parties. Obviously, there's a lot of different kind of like situations across the country. We've got like Bristol with like a massive like uni society and very like urban, lots of Young Greens, and somewhere there aren't any Young Greens anywhere. So like, for example, I grew up in Durham. My first interaction was there. Very few Young Greens in the Durham Green Party. Same now I'm in Bath. I often just pop over to Bristol. But from our panelists, what is the kind of biggest takeaway or one thing that you've learned about engaging with your local party as a young person? And maybe if you have any like bits of advice again on that for people. And it's Izzy, Dan, and then Jamie this time.
I think the biggest thing I've learned is that the local party, they're really grateful to have young people involved. Because like, I think they've been, they maybe trying to want more young people, think, oh, we've not got that many young people involved in the local party, but they're not really sure how to get young people involved, and they've not got those contacts. So if you proactively say, hey, I'd like to, help out, or I would like to set up a Young Green group in the area, like they are really like responsive to that. So I think that's sort of the biggest thing I've learned, is that, yeah, they want more young voices and they're just happy that you're helping out. So they're not like looking down on you for being young or anything. They're actually like really happy and positive and supportive.
Yeah, I would totally second that, Izzy, especially when I was in Cambridge. It almost kind of became a joke how happy people were to have Young Greens around. In particular, the head of the council, the Green Party council group in Cambridge, was just delighted. She basically was like, no, you're essentially all just my grandchildren for a bit. Like, I will feed you, I will look after you all, I'll check in on you and make sure your degree is going okay. Some people are so unbelievably supportive. One of the things that is actually slightly bizarre is, as Young Greens, we have the wonderful thing that is the Young Greens nationally. And so I think a lot of young people actually find it easier to get involved in the national party than their local parties, and easier to get involved in the National Young Greens than a lot of older members do with the party in general. And so I have the strange experience in Nottingham where actually people keep turning around to me and kind of being like, well, you know what's happening nationally. You've done national training. You've done all these things regionally. And I, despite being the youngest person in the room by at least 15 years, every single time, I've kind of become the expert on everything because the Young Greens is wonderful. So that's more of a pitch to the Young Green about getting involved in the Young Greens nationally than anything, to be honest. But actually, yes, people do occasionally look down on people and assume that young people have less expertise. The classic is you arrive and day one, someone's like, will you run our social media? No, I won't. But actually, there are lots of things that as Young Greens we do have experience of, and lots of local parties actually know about it, which is lovely.
Yeah, I agree with what Izzy and Dan have said. I'm gonna kind of build on what Dan just said there from the social media and kind of do the flip side a little bit. So prefacing this by saying that local parties are great and they're full of wonderful people, as Izzy and Dan have said. Like, it is mainly kind of older people. And they're great, like truly, like I always found it really nice to meet all these like great people, very progressive, kind of have these experiences. You can talk to them and they're like I said, really, really just genuinely delighted that young people are kind of getting involved in the local party. Sometimes that happiness of you being involved can become like, please join our exec. Like, oh yeah, and you can be our social media person because you're young, you know how social media works. And they kind of can think that because you're the young person, you'll fix all of the youth related problems. back in 2020 or 2021, actually Amelia was there as well. We went to a call with like a genuinely lovely local party, like truly lovely. They were all amazing. They were so happy that, and they kind of wanted to have a little like chat with like the young people to see like what insight we could give on stuff. And I remember them saying like, first, they wanted to ask us questions. First question, they were like, so how do we get more young people involved in politics? And I was like, look, if I had that answer, then like literally every party in the world wants to know that answer. Like, I don't know. Like, who knows? Like, I don't have a simple answer of how your local party can get all the young people in the town involved. So, like, there is a bit of a thing of they're amazing, they're lovely. It's really worthwhile getting to know these people. But like Dan kind of said, don't be afraid to set boundaries and say no to things because they're great, but like just they'll be so happy there's a young person, sometimes inadvertently, totally not maliciously, they suddenly want you to do loads of stuff that maybe you don't want to do. So yeah, like of course, get involved. And like we've been saying this whole time, action days are an amazing way to get involved in your local party, to meet these people and do something really worthwhile. But don't feel like you have to join the local exec. Don't feel like you have to sit through, like go along to these what can often be pretty boring meetings about kind of process in the local party and stuff that you actually don't really care about because it's a waste of your time and you're much better spending that time on worthwhile things. So like action days and basically action days and the campaigning side are really helpful to get involved in. Of course, look, if you want to run their social media and you want to go along to all the exec meetings and you're really interested in Green Party internal process, then hey, that's great. They're going to love you extra. But most people aren't so bothered about that. So just be prepared that they'll be so happy to have you that it's worth just being like, but I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. I will help you with your action days. I will help you with your campaigning. No, I'm not going to run your social media. No, I'm not going to be on your exec and do these long meetings because, like I said, it's full of really lovely, amazing, normally retired people who often have quite a lot of time. And if you have a job or you're at uni, you might have less time. So just use that time wisely. But local parties are nice. This is meant to be a positive thing. It's just they're so happy to have you that it can spill into that sometimes.
Great. So with that, that's the end of the panel. I'd like to thank everyone for being part of this panel and the event. And I will quickly hand over to Dan, who will tell you again about the upcoming action day.
Yeah, just very quickly for anyone who wasn't here at the very beginning, we have Young Green Action Days coming up. Please do come to them. Excellent. Callum has just sent exactly the same link I was about to send. If you click on the link there, you should find details for the action days that are coming up. They are, let me just remind myself quickly. We are in London in 3 days' time on March 30th. We are in Colchester and Plymouth on the 6th. We're in Wakefield on the 13th, Oxford on the 20th of April, and Bristol on the 27th of April. All of those action days are supporting Young Green candidates, mostly for local elections, London for the London Assembly. And please do come along. There will be at least one Young Greens exec member at every single one of them. So you won't be on your own. They will be delighted to see you. I can see the RSVPs list. People are actually signing up for these. You won't be on your own. Please do come along. They're a genuinely, genuinely lovely way to spend a day. I had a great time in Worcester. A local member had cooked us some amazing vegetable soup. It's always like that. Please do click on the links. Please do check them out. And thank you all so much for giving us an hour of your evening to talk about elections, because it's pretty niche, even if we all love it.
Exactly, yeah. Sign up to the action days. Cannot stress it enough. I will echo what everyone else has said. I've made some amazing friends and eaten some amazing soups at action days. So please do sign up. We'd be really excited to see you there. And yes, thank you to our panel for spending their time talking to everyone tonight. And also thank you for everyone for actually turning up. It's been really lovely to get to speak to you. And yeah, hopefully we can see you soon. I'm going to stop recording now. Oh yeah, and make sure to follow us on like all of the platforms so you can see what we're up to, and if we've got any other events going on. Yeah, it'd be really cool to see you again. Thanks everyone.